Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. European and Ukrainian leaders will speak with President Donald Trump on Wednesday. Small groups of Russian soldiers advanced near Dobropilya in one of the biggest incursions this year, part of Moscow's drive to seize all of the Donetsk region. Ukraine dispatches reserve forces, describing heavy fighting ahead of the Trump-Putin summit. Israeli air and drone strikes pound Gaza City's Zetoun and Sabra districts for a third day, causing widespread destruction, Hamas officials have said, as Israel prepares to occupy the city. The UK, EU, Australia, Canada and Japan warn famine is unfolding and demand immediate steps to allow aid, while the WHO urges Israel to let medical supplies reach hospitals amid a catastrophic health crisis. China's military says it monitored and drove away the US destroyer USS Higgins after it entered waters near the disputed Scarborough Shoal without approval. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, despite overlapping claims from several Southeast nations. National Guard troops and armoured vehicles appear across Washington a day after President Donald Trump took control of the city's police force, saying violent crime was out of control. The mayor of the city warns the administration and calls it an authoritarian push, as 800 Guard troops and 500 federal agents are expected to be deployed. The State Department's annual rights report, shortened under President Donald Trump, alleges deteriorating human rights in Britain, France and Germany. It notes no issues in El Salvador, despite reports from deportees of beatings and sleep deprivation in prisons. The Congolese army says Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have launched multiple attacks on its positions in eastern DR Congo, despite a ceasefire deal. Several days of fighting have been reported in the region, reviving tensions between Kinshasa and Kigali. Typhoon Podol hits Taiwan's Taitung city with 191 kilometers per hour winds, forcing closures across southern and eastern regions and cancelling hundreds of flights. 9 cities, including Kaohsiung and Tainan, suspend work and school as authorities warn of destructive gusts and continue recovery from last month's West Coast strike. We start this hour in the latest development and the Israel-Gaza war, where Hamas says senior leader and chief negotiator Khalil al-Hayya has arrived in Cairo for talks on reviving mediated ceasefire and hostage negotiations with Israel. Hamas official Taha al-Nalnu says discussions with Egyptian officials will focus on stopping the war, delivering aid and easing the suffering in Gaza. The visit follows recent remarks by al-Hayya accusing Cairo of contributing to Gaza's humanitarian crisis, comments that angered Egypt. The meetings come amid ongoing regional efforts to reach a deal between Israel and Hamas. We're now joined by Nasser Mashni, who's the president of the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network. He joins us live from Melbourne. Thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. Hamas has openly criticised Egypt for contributing to Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Do you believe those criticisms are justified in this conversation, and what should Egypt change if so?
Oh, there's no question. Thank you, Thomas, for allowing me on your show today. There's no question that Egypt is complicit. It's complicit since this genocide began on October 7th, but also has been complicit for the entirety of the siege on Gaza, which is now extended almost 20 years. Egypt has allowed Israel to maintain that air, land and sea blockade. And what we should have seen with thousands of trucks of aid sitting at the border is the Egyptian army escort that aid in. The fact that they haven't reached out to their fellow human beings, let alone Arab brethren, Islamic brethren, is an indictment upon the Egyptian government.
Nasser, we have seen next to no movement, stall after stall, in diplomatic negotiations in Qatar. Talks reportedly aim to stop the war, deliver aid and ease the suffering. From a Palestinian perspective, what are the non-negotiables in any deal with Israel here?
Look, I think we need to work out why no peace deal has ever happened, why no ceasefire is actually held. Israel is a settler colonial regime. And what we know about settler colonialism is it wants all of indigenous land with as few indigenous people as possible. October 7 was never about Hamas. October 7 was about conquering all of historic Palestine and expelling the Palestinians of Gaza. What they've done in the past 2 years, enabled by a compliant West that is not checked up, not stopped arms shipments, has enabled with diplomatic impunity for Israel to make Gaza uninhabitable. And now what we have is indicted war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu saying that he's going to allow Gazan residents to leave as they enter the final phase. He's going to allow them to leave Gaza. What this is about is ethnically cleansing the remaining bit of Palestine. It's shameful that the world has allowed this to happen.
Yes, Nasser, please stay with us as we have further developments to discuss. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned Israel it could be added to the UN's blacklist of parties accused of systemic sexual violence in conflict. The draft 2025 report cites grave concern over alleged abuse of Palestinian detainees by Israeli forces while blacklisting Hamas for the first time. Guterres has urged Israel to issue directives, investigate credible complaints, and grant UN access to avoid listing. Moving on to a separate development now. International pressure on the Israeli government continues to grow in New Zealand. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says Benjamin Netanyahu has lost the plot, condemning Israel's actions in Gaza. He says recognition of a Palestinian state is under consideration as protests and parliamentary clashes intensify. Let's listen in to his statement.
Oh, I think what's happening in Gaza is utterly appalling. I think Netanyahu has gone way too far. I think he has lost the plot, and I think that what we're seeing overnight with the attack on Gaza City is utterly unacceptable, and that's what we have been calling for as an international community now for a long period of time. He is not listening to the international community, and that is unacceptable.
We're now once again joined by Nasser Mashni. He's the president of the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network once again. Nasser, we've just heard from the New Zealand Prime Minister. But before that, we have heard that the UN Chief Antonio Guterres warned Israel that it could be blacklisted for systemic sexual violence. How significant would such a listing be in terms of international accountability? And also, how do you think that Israel might respond to this? Do you think it will investigate thoroughly?
I can't believe you held a straight face while saying that, Tom. The reality is Israel doesn't investigate itself. It's laughable to suggest or think that they care what the United Nations say. A year ago, Israeli prison guards raped a Palestinian prisoner to death with a pole. When those prison guards were arrested, a riot ensued at that prison, and it was attended by 2 members of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. And they were protesting for the right to rape, for the right to rape. Earlier this year, the UN Human Rights Commission released the report saying more than a human could bear was the title of the report. What we know absolutely is that Israel subjects Palestinians to ranges of tortures. Amongst them is the use of sexual torture. It's shameful that we're even suggesting that they shouldn't be on a list. This country is a rogue, genocidal, apartheid state that doesn't belong amongst the world's body of nations. It needs to be held to account, it needs to be boycotted, it needs to be divested from, and it needs to be sanctioned.
Yes, and moving on now, Nasser, we've just heard from the New Zealand Prime Minister there saying some quite strong statements against Benjamin Netanyahu as New Zealand mulls over whether to recognise a Palestinian state or not. How important is it for the people of Palestine that more and more nations, particularly allies of Israel, recognize Palestinian state, or is this just largely a symbolic action?
Absolutely. It's entirely symbolic. What it is about, assuaging some of their own guilt and their complicity. 147 countries recognize Palestine today. It hasn't stopped the slaughter, hasn't stopped the starvation, hasn't stopped the killing. What needs to happen is countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, France and Germany, is they need to stop all military trade. They need to sanction that state. They need to expel their ambassadors. And we need to isolate Israel and its sole benefactor, the United States, its only real ally, quote unquote, and make them the pariahs that they are. Until we do such time, it'll continue to commit these acts with impunity. And reporters like yourself, Thomas, might suggest that Israel will investigate itself. It's got to be held to a higher account. It must cease to exist in the manner that it exists.
Thank you very much for joining us, Nassem, on the program. Pleasure to speak to you, as always. We now move over to Europe next, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has held a phone call with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un ahead of his meeting with US President Donald Trump in Alaska later this week. The Kremlin says Putin briefed Kim on the planned talks, while both leaders pledged deeper cooperation under their strategic partnership agreement. Reports says they discussed strengthening ties and future collaboration. Putin expressed appreciation for North Korea's role in liberating Russia's Kursk region in the war ahead against of Ukraine, praising the bravery of Korean People's Army troops. Meanwhile, South Korean intelligence says Pyongyang has sent over 10,000 troops to Russia and may deploy more. We are now joined by Paul Gorchanov, and he's a Russian financial analyst, and he joins us live from Moscow to discuss this further. Paul, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Can you tell us a bit more about this relationship between Pyongyang and Moscow, and what benefits both sides see in one another?
Well, they're neighbors. Let's begin at the beginning. And find themselves in rather similar circumstances in terms of the G7, or what we call the Western world. There is a comprehensive strategic agreement recently signed between North Korea and Russia. Yesterday's telephone call between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin was mostly just the, "Hi, how are you, neighbor?" I don't think anything more than that, and bringing both sides up to date of current hot topics. But the relationship has expanded. It's much deeper than sending troops or sending construction personnel. With that, we'll be serving to set up, fix the damage in eastern Ukraine, or now Western Russia, Novorossiya. So it's very much a work in progress, and North Korea benefits in terms of agriculture, technology, a whole raft of pluses that it's not getting from anyone else, except possibly China and other neighboring countries that aren't totally sanctioned away. So what more can one say?
Yes, Paul. Obviously, Pyongyang, a known adversary of Washington, Russia seemingly trying to warm relations towards President Donald Trump in this current administration. How do you see this Putin-Kim phone call in shaping the dynamics before the Alaska summit with Trump?
Well, much the same way as Trump's chat with the EU member nations. Look, these are world leaders, for better or for worse, and keeping communication lines open at whatever level, be it personal or professionally diplomatic, is true progress. We didn't see that for a number of years under Biden, and we're still really not seeing it out of the Brussels regimes.
Yes, and Paul, finally, What role do you think North Korea hopes to play in Russia's war strategy beyond manpower support?
Well, it's actually a very good opportunity for North Korea to be able to send equipment, manpower, not military, but construction personnel, everything from roads to bridges to buildings, and to quickly put a repaired face on those unfortunate villages and towns that have been wiped out during this military conflict. It's much easier to do it with the help of North Korea than to do it locally, like had to be done with Mariupol.
Paul Goncharov, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Pleasure to talk to you. We now move on once again, where China's military says it monitored and drove away a USS destroyer that sailed near the disputed Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea, the first known American operation in the waters in at least 6 years. It came a day after the Philippines accused Chinese vessels of dangerous maneuvers and unlawful interference during a supply mission near the atoll. China's Southern Theater Command claims the USS Higgins entered without government approval and says the move seriously violated China's sovereignty and undermined peace and stability in the region, vowing to stay on high alert. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, despite overlapping claims from several nations. The Scarborough Shoal is a key flashpoint in a waterway that handles over $3 trillion in annual trade. Manila says this week's actions by Chinese vessels caused a collision between two of them, the first such known incident, while China's Coast Guard says it took necessary measures to expel Philippine ships. We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he joins us live from Tokyo, Japan. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Nagao, here on the program. What is the significance behind the Scarborough Shoal? And what can you tell us about China's claims to the South China Sea, and also the tensions that arise from this situation?
Indeed, preventing China's building the artificial island in Scarborough Shoal is decisive. The battle in who will control the South China Sea and who will control China's mainland. So that is why this is very decisive important place. Because what is the logic I need to explain? Because for China, most important place is the coastal cities. So defending coastal city, what China should do is building the fortress in the East China Sea, Taiwan, and the South China Sea. This is in front of the city. So how to build fortress in these places? In case of the South China Sea, it's building artificial island, and under the protection of the fighter jet or other military assets from these artificial islands, China want to deploy nuclear missiles which mounted on the nuclear submarines. In this case, if the other country try to attack China, this could be the nuclear war, so that's why this is invincible. So that's why no country try to take such kind of the high risk. But to deploy the nuclear submarine with nuclear missiles, they need to create area which is sacred for the submarine, so very safe place. But currently, the China's artificial islands only in the Spratly Island, Paracel Island, and so with the Hainan Island, this is only one line, not the area, just one line. In this case, there's no place, no safe place for the submarine to deploy. So if the China builds a base in Scarborough Shoal, this is not just one line. They will create a triangle in the South China Sea. In this case, within this triangle, they can deploy the nuclear missile or mounted on the nuclear submarine, any place within this triangle. So that's why to deploy the nuclear submarine, which create the invincible fortress in front of the coastal city of China, they need to build something, the strong military base in Scarborough Shoal. So that's why this is a decisive area. Both U.S. and China compete, and the Philippines try to protect by showing very strong courage. So that is why Scarborough Shoal, Scarborough Shoal, Scarborough Shoal. That is the matter for a long time. So that this is a decisive competition between U.S. and China and the Philippines and China.
Dr. Nagal, thank you for such insightful context. We now move over to the United States for our next story. Do stay with us, Dr. Nagal. A contingent of National Guard troops began reporting for duty in Washington, D.C., departing from the city's armory under orders from President Donald Trump. The deployment is part of a federal takeover of law enforcement operations in the nation's capital. Reaction from residents has been mixed. Some have criticized the move as politically motivated, while others have expressed support. Let's listen in to what some of them said.
It's a joke. It's unnecessary. Really unnecessary. I mean, you know, when it comes to the city, you know, you have city crime, and as you looked at all the statistics, crime is really down. So it's really unnecessary. It's a kind of a horse and pony show.
I would say it's a little bit of shock, just because if there's an issue with the law enforcement, maybe they should be, you know, trained differently or something like that. I don't think necessarily having other people take over their jobs.
Mayor Muriel Bowser confirmed that U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is acting as the president's representative. Let's listen in to what she said.
The executive order is clear. The president has requested MPD services, and our home rule charter outlines the process. The president designated Attorney General Bondi as his proxy to request services for me.
We are now joined by, once again, Dr. Satoru Nagal. Dr. Nagal, a lot of people have criticized this move. We saw something similar happen in Los Angeles, where the Federal Guard and eventually the U.S. Marines were deployed. Many people have criticized this as politically motivated, especially in majority Democrat leaning states and cities. What are your thoughts on that, on critics that say that this is an authoritarian push for Donald Trump?
This is an issue related with the trust. Republicans cannot trust Democrats. Democrats cannot trust Republicans. So that's why there are two police. The police, local police, controlled by Democrat government, and central government, led by the President Trump, is Republican government and sends their own police to deploy. Because two governments, central government and local government, do not trust each other. So that's why this is indeed related with cooperation between central government and local government. And because of the different party, because of the different opinion, this divide of the opinion is widened. This rift is widened in the U.S. So that's why this situation reflects the law and order, who take care of the law and order issue. So that indeed this is related with just trust between two, I think.
Dr. Nagal, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to get your insight as always. We now move over to South Asia, where the United States and Pakistan have reaffirmed their commitment to fighting terrorism in all forms after high-level counter-terrorism talks in Islamabad. The August the 12th dialogue was co-chaired by U.S. Acting Coordinator for Counter-Terrorism Gregory D. Logerfo and Pakistan's Special Secretary for the United Nations, Nabil Munir. Both sides discussed threats from the Balochistan Liberation Army, ISIS Khorasan, and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Additionally, Washington praised Islamabad's success in containing terror groups and ordered condolences for recent attacks, including the Jaffa Express and a school bus bombing in Kuzdar. The two countries also agreed to strengthen institutional frameworks and tackle emerging technologies used by terrorists. This includes extending their cooperation from national to global forums. We're now joined by Ambassador Ashok Sanjahar, who's a former Indian diplomat. He joins us live from Greece. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us here on the program. What are your thoughts of the United States seemingly warming and growing relationship, especially on this topic of terrorism?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. I would like to make two preliminary comments. Number one, in my view, the Central Command of the U.S. Defense Forces is taking this whole issue in a very parochial manner. You know, if they are talking about expanding the partnership with Pakistan to global levels, then of course it is very well known, and even in India-US bilateral documents, it has become clear that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. Pakistan has been supporting terrorism in India, whether it's through Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, or Jaish-e-Mohammed, all these terrorist groups. Also, it is known that wherever in the world any terrorist attack takes place, that linkages, there are threads that are connecting that with Pakistan. So, you know, Pakistan cannot be trusted as a counter-terror force, as a counter-terror partner in any sense. So, you know, on a very limited scale, talking about ISIS in that region, and, you know, both the countries collaborating in dealing with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all that, I think that is sort of, you know, putting blinkers on. The second point I would like to say is that the United States should not forget that for 20 years, when it was in Afghanistan, when the NATO forces were there, when ISAF forces were there, it was Pakistan which was helping the Taliban, and which came about killing the NATO forces, the American troops. How many thousands of American body bags went out of Afghanistan? Courtesy who? It was courtesy Pakistan, because Pakistan was providing a safe haven to Taliban. So, you know, the United States should, I know that countries and institutions have very short memories, but it should not limit itself to such a short memory that it has to bear the brunt of this perfidy from Pakistan all over again. Pakistan is a double-forked tongue actor. It is a two-headed snake, which is might in very short term might collaborate.
I apologize. We seem to have had some technical issues there with Ambassador Sanjahar. Hopefully he joins us soon. We need to move on now. Typhoon Podil is rapidly approaching Taiwan's southeastern coast, bringing powerful winds and heavy rainfall that are already causing concern across the region. Classified as a strong tropical storm, Podil is expected to make landfall within the next 24 hours, with sustained winds reaching up to 120 kilometers per hour and gusts potentially even higher. Authorities have issued warnings about dangerous storm surges and rough seas, which threaten coastal communities with flooding and damage. In anticipation of the typhoon's arrival, the government has ordered large-scale evacuations in vulnerable areas, moving thousands of residents to safer shelters inland. Emergency crews are working around the clock. Officials ask everyone to stay safe, follow the latest advice, and take care until the storm passes. Let's listen in to some of the residents.
上一次因为后面那两艘船没有绑好，所以他们的船舷啊断掉，整个船靠到我这边来撞到我的船，所以这次来，当然950的那个气压我们会担心啊，所以早上起来另外再多加更多的防台式的。
我们在加固船左右舷的这个船缆，然后把我们遮阳棚跟帆全部都收掉，那剩下就是检查船上排水跟其他一些设备有没有紧固，那我们目前像这艘船，这也是我们从法国进口的一艘船，那船的 状况都还不错啊。那在这种台风天，我们有信心可以应对。
We are covering the typhoon Podol, which has slammed southern Taiwan, which has left people being evacuated and hundreds of flights being cancelled. The typhoon itself is coming in from the west. It's going to hit sparsely populated the southeast coast on Wednesday, packing winds of up to 191 kilometers per hour. There's a large swathe of southern and eastern parts of the island shut down and hundreds of flights are cancelled. Taiwan is regularly hit with typhoons genuinely with its mountain east face coasting the Pacific. We now move on. Perplexity AI has made a surprise $34.5 billion all-cash bid for Google's Chrome browser. The offer, far above the startup's $14 billion valuation, comes as competition intensifies in the AI search race. CEO Aravind Srinivas says multiple funds are ready to finance the deal. Google has not offered Chrome for sale and plans to fight a US court ruling calling it a search monopoly. The Justice Department has sought a Chrome divestiture and as a remedy. Analysts doubt Google will sell, expecting a long legal battle. Chrome's 3 billion users make it a prized gateway for AI-driven search and user data. Well, that's all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.